Hey there, welcome back to Point of Sale, the retail supply chain show where we break down great retailers, the supply chains that move them, and the data they use to make decisions. I am your host, Andrew Cox, Senior Retail Analyst here at FreightWaves. When I think of customer obsession, I think of Amazon, I think of Chick-fil-A, I think of consumer companies, but customer obsession is not contained only to B2C companies. And in times like these, when transportation networks are as out of whack as they are right now, rates are as high as they are right now, and capacity is as difficult to source, now is times when retailers want to have providers that are obsessed with them in the way that Amazon is obsessed with me and everything that I buy from them. So with me here today to discuss what customer obsession means in our industry and in logistics and what it means especially at ArcBests is Dennis Anderson. He's the Chief Customer Officer at ArcBests. Dennis, thanks for taking the time, man. Welcome back to Point of Sale.
Andrew, thanks for having me. Always good to be on, and looking forward to the conversation today.
Absolutely. So we are going to talk about customer obsession, but I think we need to touch on your Q1 results. They were just announced this week, and I don't think you would have been able to achieve this good of results if you don't have this customer obsession strategy that you guys have been employing. So last time we spoke, I think it was late March. How are things going since then? And you guys posted, I think, best ever operating income for the first quarter, so I assume things are going pretty well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we had a good first quarter. I think that's the bottom line. As you mentioned, it was a record first quarter operating income and a record revenue quarter for any quarter in ArcBest history. And so, just really excited about the results there. And as you mentioned, that's not possible without our organization rallying around customers. And so. And right now is a time where, as you mentioned, supply chains are very disrupted, and we feel like we've built our company over the last several years and our strategy for a moment like this. And so, we're in the game with customers. It is a challenge out there for sure in a lot of different ways, but we're excited about all the different options that we bring to the table. And what was great about the first quarter is just seeing how those things come together for customers and seeing really strength in all of our lines of business and seeing from LTL to truckload to expedite, really good strength across the board, managed transportation as well. So excited about the quarter and just excited about the team's performance in the first.
So then there's one last question before we hop to customer obsession, and it's just, do you think that things are improving? And not to give any forward guidance, but over the last couple of weeks, over April, have you seen just the market settling in a bit? We talked the last time I spoke. I think we coined the term chaos is the new norm. It wasn't really improving, but everybody was just kind of getting used to running around like chickens with their heads cut off. Is that the same? We still there?
Well, I think we kind of gave some update on April when we released earlier this week, and I think April kind of shows that things have stayed really strong in the transportation space, and I think if you look at the indicators, inventories are still in a really low place. Capacity, you guys track this pretty well at FreightWaves, but capacity is not really rebounding nearly to the same level that demand has. And so just looking at the indicators, this is not something that certainly has subsided yet, and it's definitely still showing some strength potentially for some time. So.
Yeah, you're certainly right. The outbound tender reject index, it has come down a little bit over the last couple of weeks, but we're still looking at something like 25%, indicating that 1 in 4 contracted contracted tenders are being rejected right now by carriers. So still very difficult to source capacity, and demand is certainly outpacing capacity right now, which is why it's very important to have someone like ArcBests, like yourself, that is so focused on the customer. So let's talk about this from a business to business perspective. How can you be obsessed with the customer? Where does one start when they're building a strategy around customer obsession?
Sure. Well, I think the important thing is to really understand who your customer is and really what motivates them and how you can create value with them. And I think that's really kind of at the heart of everything that we've tried to build over the last few years, strategically. And then really as we've gotten more specific and more evolved in our customer strategy, we've done things that have gotten us better at that. But I think it all starts with just understanding what creates value for a customer, and you can't really do that unless you really take time to not just think about them, but get connected with them, get close to them, understand their business, and maybe even in some ways, I mean, you have a situation where we may bring supply chain expertise, but we need to learn about their business, and so there's some synergy that comes together when you're able to really get connected and maybe even bring something to the table that the customer didn't realize they needed and that you could offer. And so I think it just starts with that, just understanding the customer best, and then from there figuring out how to best create value for them.
And that just starts with open communications from the onset?
It does, and there's a lot that goes into that. I mean, we've invested quite a bit in understanding our customers, just things that you'd think about from market research, but then other things, and just being able to listen to the voice of the customer, being able to understand what they're going through in the moment, and also kind of in the relationship with us. And so, and not just understand that, but then be able to do something about it. Because I think, communication can only take you so far. There has to be action that follows that communication that really shows a partnership. And so I think that's kind of, once you learn about the customer, it's really kind of about taking that next step and really being, connected in what you do for them, and really create value that way.
So Dennis, as we've spoken today and many times throughout, the times are tough right now. This market is very difficult from both sides. But what kind of concerns are you hearing from your customers now, and what are the actions that you guys are taking at ArcBest to circumvent those problems and try to keep freight moving?
Absolutely. Well, I think we kind of touched on at the beginning of the conversation. Just the entire dynamic right now, from a supply chain perspective. I mean, it's like every day when you open the news or whatever provider you're checking your news out on, it's like there's some other hit to a supply chain. I mean, from really generational weather events in the first quarter, to, I mean, who ever heard of a ship getting stuck in the Suez Canal? But those kinds of things, it seems like, it's been one thing after another, and then you look at what's going on from a demand perspective, and that's been something that I don't know that anyone could predict, as we've progressed through the different stages of the pandemic, and how the world is recovering from that. I think the most optimistic people at the beginning of the pandemic, a little over a year ago, were talking about a V-shaped recovery, and I don't know if it's looking like a V or a check mark or what the situation is, but it's in different industries, it's hit different ways. And so, and you and I've talked about just the difficulty in understanding what's going to happen in the future based on historical data. And I think a lot of modeling, particularly around inventory, and just for retailers, for brands. I mean, understanding where demand's coming from has been a real challenge. And then on top of that, we talked about the supply dynamics. So supply shocks can happen either in like what we talked about with the weather, or in an event like the Suez Canal. They can happen Also, some of this is also structural with the driver shortage and just the things that have been progressing probably for years that the pandemic has accelerated or has exposed as demand has really outstripped uh, logistics providers' ability to react to that demand. And so, I think if you're a shipper today, it's really about understanding flexibility and what options are available to me to get my product to market to my consumer. And I think that's the thing that we hear really often right now is in what ways can we make this work. People are looking for capacity in just about any way that they can get it. And I think that's an indicator of how difficult the situation is with the supply demand imbalance that are being driven by factors on both sides.
Dennis, you're certainly right about how difficult it is to model and project. I've seen many big retailers that have just withheld guidance over the next year because of all the uncertainty. And that's why in a time like this, when there is so much uncertainty and you're trying to focus on your own operations, it is important and it's valuable to have a customer or to have a provider that is obsessed with you in this way and that's willing to work with you and also has assets that it could leverage. I think that this is a huge point that we haven't spoken to yet about having a provider that is obsessed with you, but also has assets that it could leverage whenever it needs to. Talk to me about how valuable it is to have assets that you can leverage.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of times that starts the conversation with us, and when shippers are really looking for someone to move their goods. I mean, they're looking for someone that actually has the assets, as you said. And what's great about having that is we've got those, but we've also got the expertise to know that we can't haul everything on our assets, and so what that allows us to do is to really position those well where they are helpful, and then at the same time be able to offer different options. And I think that's the power of having the strategy that we've had, and that's been, like I said earlier, I mean that's been a multi-year strategy. You don't just wake up and have an asset-based network or wake up and be a credible logistics provider that can offer all these other modes. And so that's been really a great call, and then I think it's also played out really well over the last few months. But you're absolutely right. In a lot of the conversations, it's just a more credible conversation because we have assets and because we've managed those for years and we understand what that takes, but then also how that actually allows us to understand operators that we may be sourcing that are not our own assets, but we understand maybe what their situation is and are able to navigate that for shippers as well.
Dennis, I got to say, I am highly impressed. That answer, I think you had about 90 seconds there, and you didn't use the word flexibility or agility, the two words of transportation, COVID-19. Very impressive. I wanted you to speak a little bit about, I think it's been 6 or 7 years since the rebranding to ArcBest, and you guys kind of adding on more services to establish yourself as not just an LTL provider, but as a full-service logistics provider. And I just wanted you to talk through kind of how some of relationships have grown through that transition. You may have had customers that were just LTL, customers back in the day, but they've grown to add expedited service or dedicated service or something else. So just talk to me about how relationships have grown through this process.
Absolutely. So, and I think that transformation really goes back more than 6 or 7 years. It's really accelerated more recently, but we started down this path maybe a little over a decade ago when our current chairman, president, and CEO, Judy McReynolds, came into her role in 2010 and really started looking strategically at where we were. And at the time, our LTL carrier, ABF Freight, was over 90% of our revenue. And so we were really viewed and really were an LTL carrier that had a few things that we offered customers around that. And And so, the conversation really was limited to a conversation about LTL. And so what, in that conversation, you can't necessarily have a fully robust dialogue around how a customer supply chain's working, because you're mainly focused in one mode, and how you can help in that mode. But what the strategies allowed us to do over the years, I mean, you mentioned, we rebranded to ArcBest earlier in the 2010s, and that was about 7 years ago. Rebranded ArcBest, and then as time goes on, we've progressed to really look at ArcBest as a logistics company that has these different options, including that asset-based LTL network as one of our capacity sources, an expedite owner-operator fleet that we obtained through our acquisition of Panther in 2012, and then a growing truckload brokerage operation and a managed transportation option as well. And so that we kind of view that managed operation as it's really kind of the embodiment of that full service logistics company that's able to come alongside, partner in whatever the supply chain need is, and really look at how to optimize the supply chain, how to design it, maybe how to source the capacity for it, and then also even how to execute it, how to run it. We've got customers where we're the entire logistics arm for them at this point, and so that is customer obsession. And if you're having a single mode conversation, a carrier is typically more interested in making sure that their assets are utilized in the best way, and so they're going to have a conversation that really is about how do I manage my assets while meeting your needs, right? And then a logistics provider, though, can have a conversation about how do we meet your needs, and then we'll figure out how our capabilities and our network and our assets can play a role in that, or not. But at the same time, a lot of times what we see is that's a very, very helpful thing to have in the conversation, especially in times like today.
So in the statement I read at the top of every show, it says ArcBest makes it easier for you to do business. And when I think about this, I have to think to the UPS earnings call, which I just heard this past week. And so CEO Carol Tomé, she spoke to the $4 billion CapEx investment they're going to make over the next year. And she gave two examples of the things that they're going to be spending on. And they're very CapEx, not very CapEx intensive things. So it's a billing system to get them paid faster, and and another type of system that allows them to send out invoices faster. Nothing that focuses on capacity or actual service or actually making it easier for you to do business. It's just making it easier for you to do business with UPS. And I think that it seems to me that you guys are not taking that approach, and it's the opposite approach. It's how can we make your business easier, not easier for you to do business with us.
Well, and I think that you just nailed the subtlety of being customer obsessed. And that's when you put yourself in the shoes of the customer and you look for a way for them to win, and they'll help you win. And that's really kind of the essence of what we're talking about in being customer obsessed. And so all those things are great things. I mean, yes, we need to work on all those things as well as we progress through that strategy. So that drives us to do things like, as you mentioned, work on a billing system, or work on some of the back office things that need to be updated to serve a customer better. It drives us to do those things, but it does it really through the lens. It helps us really with prioritization as well, because if you think about it, I mean, that's a never-ending cycle there. I mean, we could be upgrading those things for all of time, because the processes continue to advance in all of these areas, from back office to how our network works to just anything else. But we could be doing that for all of time and never have all the resources, but actually doing things in a way that makes sense and creates value for customers actually gives us a prioritization framework as well for our own business. So that whole customer obsession idea has really helped position us, as we talked about kind of on the top, about it's positioned us to really also understand what can drive greater value from our business.
Right, it's certainly not a finish line or a destination by any means. It's a journey that you're constantly improving upon. Let's spend the last couple minutes and hone in on retail for a moment. I know you guys have a service that you launched, Retail Plus, that really help. It works. It's been co-created with an advisory board of retail executives. So I do want to talk about Retail Plus and talk about retail compliance in general, because this is a topic that's fairly new to me.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Retail Plus, you mentioned one of the things that we're most proud of about it is that it was co-created with customers, and that's not a normal thing, I think, in our industry, to have a product line or a service offered that is co-created. And essentially, we and this has been a couple of years ago, and really even a couple of years before that. We're working with our customers, and a lot of our customers are in the retail vertical would be retail vendors or suppliers, so brands that are shipping to retailers. And so we sit in this unique position of having retailers themselves as our customers, but also having their suppliers as our customers. And so we see both sides of what can be sometimes a tug of war between a supplier and the retailer themselves. And the other thing that kind of positions us uniquely is that we do business with several different retailers and deeply understand their operations, their systems. At the same time, we understand those vendors' operations and systems. And so really this we've talked a lot over the last few months about e-commerce. It's almost like it's become a new topic, but I mean, we've been talking about e-commerce for a long time, and just omni-channel fulfillment has been a topic in the retail community for a while. And so even 5, 6, 7 years ago, retailers were looking for ways to improve their supply chains and really drive on time and in stock for their products on the shelves. And so many of them came out with some variation of programs that were designed to put responsibility on the vendor if the vendor's product was not available to be in stock at the time that it needed to be there for the retailer sales to thrive. And so there were a lot of different ways to go about this, but in many cases that resulted in a system of penalties or chargebacks, which in a lot of ways, in a lot of cases, is actually off the percentage of the product cost. So it has nothing to do with the logistics of the product. It's actually a penalty that is assessed based on the cost of the actual product. And so, obviously this became quite a topic for our vendor community, but also, I mean, for the retailers as well, really trying to solve this issue of being in stock with all the supply chain disruption that they were already experiencing several years ago. And so, as part of our strategy, as we really kind of started wrapping our heads around this idea of customer obsession, we recognized the opportunity to be able to sit in this conversation pretty uniquely between retailers and vendors and really try to find a solution that made sense. And so we created our Retail Customer Advisory Board, which still exists today, in 2017, brought together several of the retail vendor community into a co-creation conversation that survives to now, and basically created, and we launched the Retail Plus service in 2019, almost 2 years ago. It was in June 2019, and basically what that service has done is it's allowed better visibility, automation. It's also kind of brought together some of our expertise with what each specific retail compliance program is. One big box retailer may not be the same exactly as another big box retailer, so that creates different requirements for when you ship, how you ship, and in some cases, being early is just as much a problem as being late. And so, what does the window look like? And those have over the years gotten tighter, more stringent, and more difficult for vendors to be able to meet. Also, at the same time, when there is a chargeback dispute between a retailer and a vendor, a lot of times that documentation lies with the carrier. And so we've allowed some better visibility into some of that documentation right there online. That's very easily accessible, and before would have to be chased down maybe for a number of emails or over a period of days or weeks, kind of going back and forth in a process of dispute. We've helped our retail vendor customers dramatically reduce that time that they spend in those conversations with some of that visibility. So it's been a product that has been exciting to see not only launch because it came from those co-creation conversations, but then also evolve. And I mean, right now clearly it was maybe even a couple of years ahead of its time in how it came about. But we're excited about that, and just that's been something that I think has really resonated with our retail community.
Well, Dennis, I think that's a perfect place to end it. I think any ways that we can find ways to be more collaborative as an industry. I think that one lasting impact that COVID will have, it brought this industry closer together. When times got tough, I do think this industry came together, and I think that that's something that will stick long term. This is obviously a free market and a very competitive one, and that will stay as well. But I do think that people care more now than they did. They don't think so much about my product; they think about our supply chain together, and you're a testament to that there at ArcBests. So thank you for your time and all the insights today.
Absolutely. Well, great to be with you, Andrew, and I totally agree. There's never been a time, I think, where supply chain has been more relevant but at the same time, more collaborative. So we're excited to be part of that.
Absolutely. Perfect way to put it, collaborative and relevant. Thank you again, Mr. Dennis Anderson, the Chief Customer Officer at ArcBest. This has been episode 13 of the Retail Supply Chain Show, Point of Sale. Join us again next week. Actually, we are going to be off next week because of FreightWaves Live at Home airing Wednesday, so we'll be back the week after that. I'll find a great guest for you. Don't worry. Make sure to subscribe to the Point of Sale newsletter. You can get that at freightwaves.com/POS. You can also subscribe to the Point of Sale podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts, Apple Music or Spotify, or you can catch on demand anytime at tv.freightwaves.com. You can also subscribe to Freightcast and get all of FreightWaves podcast and audio shows on one feed. I suggest it. It is fabulous. Again, we'll be back week after next. That's been it. Thanks for paying attention to episode 13, Point of Sale.